This Friday, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores the goal in the game this Saturday, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Participate this Friday morning at 9:45. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, brought to you by Volunteer State Bank. Real people, real solutions right here. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks to John Glennon for joining us in the last segment. And, Joe, some breaking news as well on the Titans front, and I don't think a huge surprise here, but Field Yates was the first one I saw put this out. The Titans converting $14 million of Julio Jones' salary into a signing bonus, creating $11.2 million in cap space and adding 2 void years as well. So $14 million converted of Julio Jones' salary into a signing bonus and $11.2 million in cap space created as well.
Yep, so, those void years, so you got more space now. To the point of the pro football focus, pro football talk piece, you look at the 11 in base salary, 11 plus. Like, what if Julio Jones has a great year for the Titans? Does that then embolden him to be looking for something new, something more? This has happened before with Julio Jones.
It has.
So, but hey, that's a problem the Titans would love to have. They would love to have him be so good this year, that there's talk of maybe sweetening the deal for him.
So with that in mind,
redoing the deal.
I was going to wait to talk about this till the next segment, but it feels like a pretty good opportunity right now with that news in the fold. So this is Julio Jones. This is going to be his first game as a member of the Titans. Looks like he's a full go out there from what you've been able to see in practice. And we could get our first glimpse on Sunday of A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill all on the field together at the same time in a game setting. What are fair expectations for Julio Jones this year? Obviously, a lot of hype around the Titans, and a lot of that has to do with the addition of Julio Jones and what he could bring to this offense. As we sit here today, given training camp going the way that it went and Julio not being on the field all that much, what are fair expectations for Julio Jones as we sit here today a few days before Week 1 this year?
Well, I think fair expectation, I start with just availability. I understand that, if he plays every game and then he has 27 catches for 300 yards, then that's okay. That's not okay. But just, can he be out there? Can he be healthy? Does he play all or most of the season? I think if he does, he's going to be very productive. It's just so hard. Again, I will take this to the fantasy drafting because I just did it, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. Sometimes, that really crystallizes things for you. And I was like, I had A.J. Brown actually there for me, and I didn't take him. And I was like, I just don't know how it's going to go with these guys. Health-wise, ball distribution-wise. The Titans could have a great offense this year, be over 30 points again, and I think the stats could vary pretty widely in terms of pass catchers. I think that I'd be shocked if they do that and Derrick Henry isn't at 1,500 plus. To me, he's the sure thing as far as an offensive producer. But I could see Julio Jones, missing some games and having 800 yards receiving or something like that, and still being a big factor in a successful offense.
Yeah.
So it's just hard for me to. I think if you just say, okay, what numbers would be good for? Well, you'd like to see Julio Jones get 75, 80 catches and 1,000 plus yards.
Yeah, look, if that's not the expectation for Julio Jones, is to come in and be a guy like that who can catch 75, 80 balls, give you over 1,000 yards, I'm not sure why you made the trade. That should be the expectation for Julio Jones.
Well, except that we don't know how defenses are going to attack the Titans, and I think that he could be a very high price but very effective decoy some weeks. There's going to be some weeks where it's – I think Tannehill is really good at not – even last year, like A.J. Brown, clearly in some situations, maybe he should have done this more, as in the playoff game. But, sometimes you got to throw it to your best player. But for the most part, I just think Tannehill's really good at pre-snap recognition and just going where they ain't. Just spreading the ball around, taking good matchups. There's going to be some good matchups for other people. So I think Julio Jones, if he's out there healthy, available, and playing well and still making plays, he could have underwhelming numbers. But if your numbers as an offense are great, that to me still speaks to his value.
I would agree. I just still think he's good enough to where he's going to demand the ball to be thrown to him a lot. And Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, we've talked about it. How much are the Titans going to throw the ball more this year? There's obviously a temptation, and I understand it as the game goes on. You're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry a lot, and Derrick Henry is going to get a lot of carries this year. Now, is he going to get 400 carries like he did a year ago? Maybe not. We'll find out what that extra game means on that front as well, and how the Titans utilize him offensively. But, to me, Julio Jones at this age, I'm not expecting 1,800 yards and 203 targets like we saw in 2015. I'm not really expecting anywhere near that. But if you told me right now that Julio Jones didn't get 1,000 yards this year, I'd be disappointed by that. That's why you make a trade to go get a guy like Julio Jones to bring him in and to bring some of that production. Now, obviously, barring health, and that's the part of this that we don't know, but if Julio Jones is available all season, 1,000 yards needs to be a part of this equation, in my opinion.
Yeah, but if he's, let's say he's at 850 and A.J. Brown's at 1,400 and Derrick Henry's at 1,500 and they're at 31 points, is that because – and that's the thing. We're talking about numbers before we ever watch anybody play.
Sure.
That could be because teams are just like, you know what, they're going to bracket him more. Or it could be like Tannehill has a great connection with A.J. Brown and didn't have the time to build it with Julio.
Yeah.
Or it takes him 5-6 games to get that or whatever. I just think it could still be really good without those numbers. Also, you can flip it around and I could see Julio Jones having 1,400 and A.J. Brown having 900. I think it could go so many different ways. You know how it is on a given week. Sometimes you hit two big shots, and all of a sudden you got a 200-yard receiving game.
Right.
Then one week you have 3 catches for 17 yards.
Sure.
It's just –
a lot of this is, I think, what I'm maybe most intrigued to see as the big picture develops, and outside of the wins and the losses and all that, is on a week-to-week basis, if this offense can stay healthy and – A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and Derrick Henry are all the players we think they can be, how do defenses choose to defend them each week? Because, number one, I think it's going to change on a week-to-week basis. I think it's going to depend on who they're playing and the matchups they bring to the table. But, if A.J. Brown is just carving teams up because they're spending a lot of time focusing on Julio Jones, I would imagine at some point that's going to change and they're going to shift their attention to A.J. Brown. Can Julio Jones take advantage of that? That, to me, may be the most intriguing part of not only this Titans team this year, but really one of the big storylines of the NFL as a whole is how do defenses go about trying to defend this offense? Because it's almost a pick your poison type deal, and I think it's going to change pretty dramatically from week to week.
Yeah, I'm very interested to watch these guys play and how they all work together, but I'm almost as excited to just see what defenses are doing, and how it changes from week to week. It's going to be, and that's the thing. Apart from the numbers, you just want to see these guys be hell on defenses like they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
because if they're playing like we know they can play and what they've already done in the league, it should work, right? It should work as long as your quarterback is playing like he's been playing and just finds the matchups, gets the ball out fast, lets them make plays. I'm not saying it's a foolproof plan, but boy,
Pretty good.
I mean, it seems like it has a chance to work.
We'll take your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. What are fair expectations this season for Julio Jones? Hit up our text line. We'll get to as many of those thoughts coming up next as we can. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals to check out Nashville's best deals. Save cash with a purchase of a $10 gift card for retro snow for only $5. Nashville's original shaved ice truck bringing back snowballs with creativity and pure cane sugar, dreaming up new flavor combinations, and adding fresh, delicious toppings is what makes us Retro Snow and Nashville's original shaved ice truck. Go visit their first ever permanent location in the nations at 806 51st Avenue North, open Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 7 p.m. Check out Retro Snow's truck schedule at retrosnowtruck.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, brought to you by Volunteer State Bank, now with 2 locations in Murfreesboro. You can visit our brand new location in Murfreesboro at 2019 Memorial Boulevard. Volunteer State Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Talking Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Gabe in Columbia texting in. To Joe's point about defenses adjusting to the Titans' offense from week to week, it's going to be fascinating to see how Belichick, famous for creative schemes, deploys his defense against the Titans in late November. And that is true. They will see Bill Belichick this year. We'll see how the Wizard decides to try to defend the Titans.
Now focus on the game at hand. Don't get too far ahead of yourself.
That's right.
You live in the moment.
1 week at a time.
That's right.
Got to get better play to play.
What's that?
Got to get better play to play.
Oh, right. There you go. Yeah, better play. Yeah, 1% better. 1% better every day.
Thank you. Adam in Portland on the text line. 80 catches, 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP honors for Julio Jones.
Oh, is that all?
That is, now, it's funny because Adam, obviously, I think, is joking there. Maybe to some degree. Maybe not to some degree.
It's hard. You never know. Is it sarcasm or not?
That's true. Well, the interesting part of this, though, is going to be the touchdowns. And I've got some FanDuel odds I'm going to give us here in just a second on some prominent members of the Titans. But we've talked about this before. Like, Julio Jones has never really been a huge touchdown guy. He had 10 in 2012. That was the most he's ever had. He had 8 in 2015. Since then, it's been 6, 3, 8, 6, and 3. So not a huge touchdown guy, especially when you consider like the volume of passes that Julio Jones has had thrown his way. Not a ton of touchdowns. He's got 60 touchdowns in his career, which is a good number, but you would expect a guy like Julio Jones probably to have found the end zone a little bit more often. I'm interested in this offense. Is that number going to remain the same? Is it going to go up? What do touchdowns look like for Julio Jones in this offense? That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and he's been on some very prolific. I was going to say, you could look at this offense and say, well, if everything works out great, then touchdowns for everybody. But he's been on prolific offenses before. Those are surprising numbers, honestly. And it actually kind of explains. Certainly, I've had him a few times in fantasy football.
Yeah,
and, kind of underwhelming a little bit.
But doesn't he kind of seem like he would be like I look at Julio Jones and the size that he brings to the table and then the speed that he brings to the table as well. And I think to myself, golly, if there's a wide receiver that should be a gigantic red zone weapon, it's Julio Jones.
Yeah, one thing that I haven't watched film of his entire career, but you haven't seen a lot of jump balls, just like end zone fades and stuff
routes,
like that
yeah.
to him. And you would think that would be pretty obvious for him. I mean, his length is his size very obvious out there. So I don't know why that would be. But obviously great run after the catch guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm trying who scored all those touchdowns for the Falcons? I mean, Devontae Freeman scored a lot of them, Maybe Matt Ryan spread it around. They've had other good weapons, but I don't know. I could see him having plenty of TDs this year for the Titans. I feel like Ferkser is a guy who's going to be a real red zone weapon, but it's not like Ferkser's had a whole bunch of touchdowns. And Derrick Henry to have more than anyone else. That's the only thing I really feel good about.
I have a feeling A.J. Brown find the end zone a few times too.
Yep.
It's pretty good on that front. Mason on YouTube says, I don't care what Julio does during the regular season as long as he's healthy and productive down the home stretch and into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I would argue that he has to – there's a certain level of production that they're going to need from him to get to the playoffs.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you could pick Julio out some, not doing a ton, first half of the year, but know that he would be healthy at the end and like full go Julio Jones, I still think this team could certainly be in position for that to matter by the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, availability, all three of those guys, all four of those guys, Ryan Tannehill included. That's
maybe the most important.
That's right. Because that's the thing. You have other receivers. If one of those guys were to be out in a given week or a couple weeks, you're okay. Derrick Henry, that's a big one. But, yeah, you lose your quarterback, and Logan Woodside can throw a lot of receiver screens to A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But
well, we saw it earlier in the show. I mean, the Titans Wire, the USA Today, is picking 3 1,000-yard receivers for the Titans. So that would be A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and I guess one of Anthony Ferguson or Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, sure.
Should have just taken – you got to pick somebody, right?
Yeah, or pick them both. I mean, if you're going to make some bold predictions, pick them both. 4,000-yard receivers.
And a 2,000-yard rusher that's the league MVP.
Right. A team that never doesn't have the ball.
Well, maybe the Titans defense is going to be that good where it's just 3 and out all day, baby.
3 and outs, onside kicks.
Get that time of possession. Just grinding teams out.
Yep, tip passes and picks. Yeah. I see the picture. I see it all coming together.
Adam texting back in, I never joke about my Titans. I expect Julio to light the league on fire in this offense. Tell me the running backs he's had to relieve pressure in his career. Joe always with something to say. Hashtag text rival.
Text rival.
You and Adam are getting after each other on the text line. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. As Joe immediately picks up his phone and begin texting Adam.
Right, now I need to go ahead and get after him.
Haters are Joe's motivators.
That's true.
Whoa, I like that. Nice rhyme there. John Choate on Twitter says, I think it's possible AJ has career yards, but Julio sacrifices yards, but has career TD catches.
Okay.
Yeah. I think just about any combination I could see happening. I mean, you look at a football season, and honestly, like if you have 3 monster games, as a receiver, it's never consistent, right? It's never like every single week you get 8 catches you get 6 to 8 catches for between 90 and 120 yards every single week. Yeah, rarely.
Yeah.
So I mean, all it takes is a couple monster days for one of them maybe to go beyond the other one. But again, the point is, are they out there all the time, and are they as much a problem on a consistent basis for defenses to figure out how to defend this team as they should be?
It's going to be a really interesting thing to figure out.
And then you execute.
Yeah, and that execution begins on Sunday against Arizona. When we come back, I've got some interesting odds from the FanDuel Sportsbook on some key Titans players this week, some over-unders that we'll hit coming up next. Make sure you stay tuned for that. We welcome your participation as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Make sure you're tuning in to this weekend's NFL Game of the Week on 1025 The Game, brought to you by Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue. This Sunday's NFL Game of the Week is the Cleveland Browns taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Coverage begins at 2:45 with a 3:25 p.m. kickoff. We'll be right back here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, brought to you by Volunteer State Bank. Visit volstatebank.com to learn more about our free Kasasa checking account. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Talking Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, there's a nice texting rivalry developing between you and Adam in Portland. Quite something on the text line. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Well, if he makes good points, it would be a good rivalry. So he says, okay, so he said, what running back has had to help relieve pressure on Julio Jones in his career? And I said, well, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, pretty hell of a combo there. And he said, so were Lendell White and Travis Henry. I can name old players who didn't help receivers too. Hashtag anyone else. So they didn't help Julio Jones? Like, if you have good running backs, I mean, Devontae Freeman in particular was a very good running back for a few years in this league. You don't think that helped Julio Jones? Who was better at their position? Julio Jones. But it'll always be the case in football. Balance matters. And I think they had a really good balance there.
Yep.
They had an unbelievable offense for a few years in there. That's why they should have won a Super Bowl with that offense.
I was in Disney World a couple weeks ago, and there was a Patriots fan walking around Disney World, and all the shirts said it was the Fox Sports cutout of the 28-3 lead for the Falcons. That was something.
I bet. I mean, 28-3 will never be forgotten in Atlanta.
No, it won't.
But, I mean, go back and watch that team and tell me that those backs didn't help Julio. But also, Adam, I missed. Adam had the hot take about Milton was way overconfident because he said had one quote, and then this is what he says about the Steelers. Been a season ticket. I think holder must be. It says ticket me ever, but believe me, autocorrect gets me a lot too. Been a season ticket holder for a long time. Steelers fans are the second worst fans to deal with. Ravens by far the worst. They're so confrontational, loud. They travel well, so it makes them awful to deal with. Win, lose, or draw, always a loud group. I hope Michelle isn't as arrogant and terrible to deal with as the jokers I've met through the years.
Yeah.
Adam?
Now we get rivalry with you and Adam too.
Well, that
I will say,
Adam's on the
I've met some pretty annoying Steelers fans. Now, I'm also well aware that there are some Green Bay Packers fans out there that are pretty insufferable. It's pretty bad.
I mean, I know of drunken Packers fans who have yelled at a child for wearing a Lions jersey.
Yes.
Who's Adam's team?
Titans.
Yeah, he's a Titans season ticket holder.
Look, Titans fans do not like Steelers fans. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Well, I think, honestly, like, the numbers would be one big thing, right?
Well,
there's a lot here and a lot who show up when they play here. And
The 08 game between the Titans and the Steelers here at
which got home field, right?
Which got home field for the Titans, which, by the way, was a great game. There was some hostility in that place between the Titans and Steelers fans. Keith Bullock stomping on the terrible towel on the sideline. There was Titans-Steelers fans do not like each other at all.
So there you
now,
go.
I'm surprised that he has the Ravens at number one because typically, I mean, I've heard some pretty bad things about Raiders fans coming in here.
But here's the thing. To me, Ravens fans, if you're a season ticket holder in particular, it totally makes sense because that means that, well, depending on how far back Adam goes with the tickets, you've been in that stadium for really some of the worst moments in franchise history with teams that could have won it all.
With some
at the expense of
Ravens fans,
right, and then the Ravens fans are in your face about those, right?
Correct.
So that's probably where it comes from. That'd be my guess. But you tell me, Adam. I mean, I'd rather hear your answer to that than any more bad takes from you today, Adam, on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
We've got some FanDuel Sportsbook odds to throw your way regarding the Tennessee Titans. I mentioned the Julio Jones touchdown. The over-under for Julio Jones touchdowns this year for the Titans set at 6.5. 6.5 for Julio Jones. As I said, last few years, you look at his touchdown totals. He had 8 in 2018, 6 in 2019, and 3 last year, although last year he played in 9 games. So 6.5, the over-under for Julio Jones.
I might pop the over there. Another game, extra game.
I'm tempted to pop the over there,
you
too.
know, prolific offense in theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good spot for it, though.
The receiving yards over-under total for Julio Jones, 950.5. 950.5, the over-under for Julio Jones for the Titans.
Again, this goes back to fantasy drafting last night and just not being sure. That's a tough one. Will not be surprised if he's, beyond 1,000 this year. Certainly that can happen. He's paid to be that kind of receiver. He's still, when he played last year, I think he still looked like one of the best receivers in the league. But when he played last year,
Yep.
So is that the start of something where he's available less often? And then just this offense you could have weeks where the Titans are absolutely rolling, and Henry has a huge game, and A.J. Brown has a huge game, and Ferkshire takes advantage of some great matchups, and Julio Jones, again, 3 catches, 17 yards. And no one's – maybe he wouldn't be happy about it, but they're winning, they're rolling, and it's just that's what the defense dictated, or that's just where Tannehill went with the ball.
The
That's a tough
over-under
one.
for A.J. Brown for receiving yards, 1,200 and a half. 1,200 and a half, the over-under for A.J. Brown.
Wow. See, I think I'd probably go with the under there, but I wouldn't. I don't think it's crazy to think he could exceed that.
I just love how it's 1,200 on the dot and then a half.
They both have a half yard. They both have a hook on the yardage. That's interesting though that his over-under is set 250 yards beyond Julio Jones' over-under.
Yeah.
Which to me is probably more than anything Julio's age, Julio coming off an injury.
The touchdown total for A.J. Brown, over-under 9.5. 9.5, the touchdown total for A.J. Brown on the FanDuel Sportsbook. And if memory serves me correctly, I think he had 11 last year. I can double-check that real quick. But I believe he had 11 a year ago. He did, 11 touchdowns last year.
He's so physical. That's where I think he has the edge over Julio Jones in the red zone, is that he's so hard to body out. He's so good at boxing out if he needs to. Well, also he can just carry half a defense into the end zone.
We have seen that
on a bum leg. So that's still I think I'd hit the over on that one. I think with 17 games.
Yeah.
Health is still the same with him, considering, a knee procedure after the season and a little bit of missed time, some reporting on a knee thing this year. But, again, I got that video yesterday at practice. Made sure to show. There's nothing
At Joe Rexrode on Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. Neither guy had any sleeves on or anything. They were doing all the drills, the ladder drill, doing it. And even telling the coaches, this is not how to do the drill. This is how you're supposed to be doing the drill. But they were fully explosive and not, protected in any way.
Right.
So 4 legs involved there. None of the legs had anything on other than shorts and cleats.
Derrick Henry, over-under 1,539 and a half. 1,539 and a half rushing yards, over-under for Derrick Henry. That's an interesting one.
It's a good over-under. So does with these props, does every single one have a half yard?
Well, yeah. So if he gets 1539,
well, I guess that's right. It has to.
Yeah. If he gets 1539,
then right,
you're out of luck.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I told you I was going to be brain dead today. We're almost through 3 hours.
We are.
And I've only muted myself one time.
That's
it's actually
good.
an incredibly successful day.
Just blame it on the draft. Just
That's
blame it
right.
on the Titans media draft.
Wow, yeah. They keep me up all night and then try to screw me over. It's fine. I'm in their heads. That's a good over-under for Derrick Henry. I think I might
I'm going over.
I think I might go the over too, but
barely.
1580. Something
I'll
like
go
that.
1634.
Okay.
That's the first number that came to mind. 1634 for Derrick Henry.
It's a good number.
Write it down. Over under 13 and a half rushing touchdowns for Derrick Henry. 13 and a half. And if memory serves me correctly, he had 17 a year ago. So over under 13 and a half for Derrick Henry. I'm going over on that one.
I'm going over too. You add a game, and I just think they're going to be in that position a lot where they're going to be close and they're going to give it to him and he's going to get in. And they should score a lot of touchdowns this year. He should have a lot of opportunities. So you expect him to hit a couple home runs. So there you go.
Ryan Tannehill, Over under 4,100 and a half passing yards. 4,100 and a half passing yards for Ryan Tannehill on the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Would be the first 4,000 plus in Titans history.
Correct.
Not franchise, because
Warren Moon,
1991, 46.90. I only know that because of an earlier segment about some crazy predictions. But I don't know.
That's a big number.
It's a big number.
4,100 and a half.
I mean, I guess if I'm expecting Derrick Henry to be more in the 1,600 range with an extra game, and I expect
got to make up for that somewhere,
right? And this offense is going to be as prolific as it's supposed to be. Then I guess I'd hit the over there.
And this is the one to me that I really couldn't figure out because Tannehill threw for 33 touchdowns last year. The over-under for Tannehill for touchdowns this year, 29 and a half. And it feels like, all right, he threw 33 touchdowns last year with Corey Davis and Khalif Raymond playing significant minutes at the receiver spot. Jonnu Smith. Now you got Julio Jones and A.J. Brown and Ferkser and Rodgers and Reynolds, all these different pieces. I'm going over on the 29 and a half with almost zero hesitation for Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he's not easily into the 30s.
I would be too.
Hey, again, if this offense is
I think he's going to approach 40.
I could see that.
So the 29 and a half, I'm going way over. That was the one I felt the strongest about on this list.
If this offense is what it was built to be, then yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these you probably like the overs. But that one that's low.
That one's pretty low to me. Maybe.
Is that a Tannehill disrespect
Maybe so.
prop?
Maybe so. We'll see what happens on that front. We'll begin to find out the answers to some of these props. You can check those out on the FanDuel Sportsbook. When we come back, we'll be joined by Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel. We'll look ahead to Tennessee's matchup against Pittsburgh. That's coming up next. But speaking of the FanDuel Sportsbook, the NFL is back, and FanDuel Sportsbook is celebrating with 40-1 odds on any Week 1 game. And who doesn't want to win $200 on a $5 bet? This is no Hail Mary. It's that simple. New customers get 40-1 odds when you place your first wager. Plus, when you win, you'll get paid in as little as 24 hours. I like the Titans in Week 1 against the Cardinals. You've got Tampa Bay coming up against Dallas as well. The defending champs back at home on Thursday night. Give me the Bucks in that game. But you take it any way you want to take it. The number 1 rated sportsbook app in America, and you can see for yourself why that's the case. They're always hooking you up with exclusive odds boosts, great promotions, and so much more. So just sign up to FanDuel Sportsbook with promo code ROB, and you can win $200 on a $5 bet. That promo code is ROB exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. New users only. A $10 first deposit required. Must wager in designated offer market. Max bonus of $200. Bonus for Tennessee users fulfilled in site credit within 72 hours. Tennessee site credit expires 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Brought to you by Volunteer State Bank, conveniently serving Middle Tennessee with 13 locations. Volunteer State Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are pleased to go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Mike, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Good. I like the Wilson County name, but I'm sad that's not my county. Like, that actually kind of bums me out a little bit, but I'll take it.
You know, we can change that. We can get you down here.
Yeah, just give someone a call and let's make a link-up happen there.
Let's see what can happen on that front. Well, Mike, we've got a lot to get into with you here today on the show. Appreciate you taking time to join us. I guess as you look back for Tennessee against Bowling Green, some plays that were made, obviously, at the offensive line of scrimmage and the defensive line of scrimmage. Tennessee was dominant in that game. Some missed throws as well by Joe Milton. What stood out to you the most against Bowling Green? What were your takeaways from Tennessee's point of view in that game?
Yeah, I thought it was the inconsistencies offensively. It was kind of the main thing I walked away from. I thought the defense did exactly what it should, given that they were playing such a lowly program. I mean, arguably the worst Power 5 or Group of 5 program going on in FBS. But I thought Joe Milton was really inconsistent. I thought the wide receivers were really inconsistent. And, yeah, I thought that was kind of the tail of it for me. The running backs played well, but the passing game was really inconsistent.
Okay, so inconsistent to the point that look, Josh Heupel, of course, is not going to think or certainly not going to say anything about a quarterback switch or even a permanent quarterback switch. But I do wonder this week, Mike, and you like me know what Narduzzi can do to quarterbacks just with his scheme. You know, I do wonder if Joe Milton doesn't take some strides here. You know, this is a big game for Tennessee, a game that Tennessee really needs when you look at that whole schedule. You know, I wonder if, there may be a switch just to get a spark, even if it's not necessarily, a permanent move.
Yeah, and I'm curious about that too. I mean, I think this is such a different test just with the way that, Narduzzi plays his corners, plays his secondary, and Milton missed throws against a bad secondary that wasn't really putting any pressure on them. And I wondered last week if we would just see someone play earlier just because. And I have wondered all along if Hendon Hooker is just the safest bet at quarterback. Milton, clearly, you were at that game on Saturday, Joe. The upside that you see with his arm and his talent is insane. But we also saw what people at Michigan saw, which is missing the throws, relying too much on the arm, and just those inconsistencies. So Tennessee does have to win this one, but I don't think they're in a rush to make any change. I think Milton's their guy. I think they're sticking with him unless he shows that he's clearly not the guy. And I don't think he showed anything on Saturday that says he's not the guy. But this is certainly a different test that will give him a better answer to that.
Mike, what did you think of the receiving core, not only in the game against Bowling Green, but as Tennessee moves forward here? Obviously, Jalen Hyatt, we know what he brings to the table with the speed and the playmaking ability. A couple of drops for Hyatt in the game against Bowling Green. Tillman, Javonte Payton. As Tennessee moves forward here and they continue to get more and more receivers available and on the field, how do you think that group stacks up when you look around the rest of the SEC?
Yeah, I don't know conference-wise, but I think it's a strong enough unit for Tennessee to compete at wide receiver. And I think certainly getting Velus Jones back fully healthy, getting Jimmy Callaway into the mix. Callaway is a guy that in the preseason maybe was generating as much praise as any receiver on the roster, and he didn't play on Saturday. So getting those two guys back in the fold, I think, is going to go a long way. But Tillman showed the other day that he can be a downfield guy and he can make some plays. And that's a nice welcome thing because he's a different wideout than the rest of that team. He's 6'3", 220-ish, just different build, different talent that can really help this team, I think. But yeah, certainly got to clean it up, and that goes back to those inconsistencies in the passing game. Hyatt had two really bad drops that, I think we talked differently about Joe Milton's game on Saturday if Hyatt makes those catches and if Milton makes one or completes one of those throws to Tillman. because those were kind of plays that I think swing your perception of that game for the whole passing attack.
So your sense on these two things, Mike, on Byron Young actually being able, I know Josh Heupel said, they're preparing as if they'll have him. And then on Cooper Mays being able to come back. I mean, it sounds like at least with Cooper Mays, it's not like a super long-term thing, which I think is really big for this team. I also think he'd really help in this game. What's your sense for those two guys being able to play, and how important is each guy, do you think, in this particular game?
Yeah, Heupel sounds optimistic that Tennessee will have both, obviously different reasons, and one they kind of have control over, the other they don't. Cooper Mays seems like it's a minor deal. Heupel said Monday that he was in the building walking around. They'll know more later in the week. But he's important. That's a position group they're very thin at. Their offensive line does not have depth. So losing guys there is a real problem for them. So that's someone they want to see back. And then obviously Byron Young's an NCAA thing. And Heupel sounds, I asked him after the game Saturday if they expect to have him back this week. He did. Echoed the same thing Monday. But at the same time, that's not really something Tennessee can control. But I'm a little bit less concerned for Tennessee about that one because I thought Tyler Barron played really, really well against Bowling Green, and the pass rush did in general against a young, really bad offensive line. But that's a group I think that has a chance to do well enough in a game like this that you might not notice that absence as much as you would later in the season.
Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike, obviously a big game on the ground for Tennessee against Bowling Green. Evans with 116 yards, Jabari Small with 116 yards as well. Did you learn really anything in that game about the rushing attack for Tennessee given the quality of opponent? And if so, what do you like about this running back room? What do you still wonder about with this group as they move ahead here to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that group's interesting because obviously Tennessee lost a lot when Eric Gray and Ty Chandler transferred, but they don't look like they've missed a beat in terms of having two guys you can roll out there. I learned more than I expected against Bowling Green, and what I saw was Tyon Evans is going to be the number one running back by the time SEC play rolls around. I think it was pretty clear that he's just a different beast. Jabari Small is certainly a capable, talented back, but the way Evans looks and the way he ran the ball, I thought was really impressive. And that third quarter, kind of when he really took over more of the carries, was kind of when Tennessee just milked out the rest of the game, and he kind of set the pace as Milton was struggling a little bit. So that's what I took away from it, is both of those guys are very capable, but I think it looks like Evans is that number one guy for Tennessee this season.
Well, how about up the middle for this team defensively, Mike? Again, like you said, Bowling Green's bad. Their offensive line is bad. So you expect to control that game up front. I thought Elijah Simmons, though, showed some activity that could be promising. It could spin forward from there. What about just the defensive front and the interior, but then also those two inside linebackers who better not get hurt this year?
Yeah, Simmons is certainly a guy who stood out. I thought he really controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the game well, which, something that you saw in spurts from just such a big guy, being able to do it longer and more consistently, I think is a really welcome sign because that interior group, Dejon Terry, that Kansas transfer, I think he's a guy who's going to have an impact there as well. But Simmons really played well. But you touched on it, and kind of the make-or-break deal for Tennessee's defense and arguably its team as a whole is the inside linebackers. It was a pretty even split in snaps between Mitchell and Banks and Page and Beasley, which was a bit surprising to me. I thought Mitchell and Banks were probably clearly the 1 and 2, at least from a clear-cut talent perspective. But I think it was 29 snaps for Banks and Mitchell and 27 for Page and Beasley, according to PFF. And that group, hit or miss and thin. And that's kind of that position that's going to have a big say in how successful this defense is because they're experienced in the front end and back end. And those groups both played well the other day, but the linebackers have to be good and have to be really stout, I think, for this defense to have a shot.
Mike, last thing for you here. We got our first-hand look at the tempo of Josh Heupel and this offense. Obviously a complete 180 from what we saw from Jeremy Pruitt and his staff a year ago. What did you think of the tempo, the execution of just the operation of the offense in the game against Bowling Green, and how well do you think this style of offense is going to translate in the SEC? Maybe not even this year, but as Josh Heupel continues to grow and build his program here at Tennessee.
Man, my main takeaway was it's harder for me to keep notes now than it was before. That was the big one. I mean, I could write a novel between plays for Pruitt's offensive staff, but this one, it's if you blink, you're probably missing the next play. I thought they did well with it early. It seemed like they really slowed it down at points later on, just given the game situation. But early on, I mean, that first quarter, you're flying watching that and taking that in. But it seemed like they handled it well. It seemed like the communication was there from sideline to players. And, I mean, obviously Tennessee scored on those first two drives, so they felt good about how those things went. But that's probably going to continue to be a work in progress, just with such a drastic change from what many of these players are used to and the journalists in the press box are used to.
I really need to see some of your notes from the Pruitt offense. I bet you there'd be some wonderful observations on the Jim Chaney attack.
I burned them, all of them.
Probably a good call on that front. Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Mike, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel does a great job of covering all things Tennessee Volunteers. We'll come back. We'll react to what Mike had to say there. Take your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025, as the Volunteers look ahead to Pittsburgh coming up on Saturday. All that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. NFL fans, don't miss Nashville's best NFL pregame show live from Rock Bottom Brewery in downtown Nashville this Sunday. The NFL pregame show features Jared Stillman, Mark Howard, and former Titans wide receiver Chris Sanders. Join them from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. live at Rock Bottom Brewery on Broadway prior to the Titans taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The NFL pregame show is brought to you by TriStar Moving, Parman Tractor and Equipment, FreedomTireGuys.com, FanDuel, E2 Roofing, Hillside Medical, Social Furniture, and Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Brought to you by Volunteer State Bank. Real people, real solutions right here. Remember, FDIC equal housing lender. Thanks to Mike Wilson from the Knoxville News Sentinel for joining us in the last segment. And, Joe, this is a very intriguing game coming up on Saturday for the Vols against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh on the FanDuel Sportsbook is favored by 3.5 in this game. So a 3.5-point line for the Panthers in this game. And when we look back to preseason predictions for the Vols, there was a wide range, anywhere usually from 4-8 or 4-8 to 8-4. Most people landed 6-6, 7-5, 5-7. And one big difference in these predictions that we saw to begin the season was the Pittsburgh game. A lot of people had the Vols winning the Pittsburgh game. Some had the Vols losing the Pittsburgh game. There are many what I would call, I guess, toss-up games on the schedule for the Vols as we look forward to SEC play coming up. But this is a big toss-up game for Josh Heupel and company early in the season. You're at home. It's a nationally televised ESPN game at 11 o'clock, and a big step up in competition from week 1 to week 2 for both Pittsburgh and Tennessee as well, with Pittsburgh destroying the UMass Minutemen 51-7 in week 1.
Yeah, well, and personally, I picked the Vols to go 6-6 and lose this game. So I guess from my perspective going into the season, this is the difference between 6 and 7. That's a big difference too. And obviously, I've got a couple SEC wins that they may not get. So this could absolutely make the difference between bowl eligibility or not for a team that, granted, may be self-imposing a bowl ban, but may not be self-imposing a bowl ban. I've got an open mind on that based on things I've heard. That is going to be interesting as we move forward. But if you're the team, that's what you're trying to do. And if you're Josh Heupel, whether that happens or not, I think it's important to have a 500 or better season. This is a big, big game. And I think I think Vegas has it right with Pittsburgh. It's a slight favorite. I guess 3.5 is a little bit high. That moved from what to what? Moved from what to 3.5?
The first line I saw was 1.5 for Pittsburgh.
That's a big move. But Pittsburgh it's a good team. This is Kenny Pickett, as Josh Heupel said yesterday, wow, that dude's still there. He's developed into an NFL prospect. There were some people thought he'd be a mid-round pick last year. He came back to try to improve on that. I'll tell you what, based on what I'm seeing of draft-eligible quarterbacks so far really early, it's a pretty big step down this year from last year. But he's good. He has some good receivers. Krull, the tight end, is a stud. And then defensively, you can't take much from UMass. UMass is bad. But the Pat Narduzzi style, the press coverage, the quarters, which is a lot like just press man, and the exotic blitzes all day long from different angles, this is what he's going to do. And look, I guarantee you Pat Narduzzi, who we're going to have on the show this week, has looked at that film. He would never tell us this, of course. But I guarantee he's looked at that film.
We'll find out.
Well, I guess it's worth a shot. But watching the film of Joe Milton against Bowling Green, he's saying, I think we can bother this guy, disrupt this guy, pressure this guy. Without pressure, Joe Milton, to me, wasn't decisive enough. So he's got to really step up to meet this challenge. It's going to be very different than the first game.
Well, and it's a big week for him in terms of not only making the throws that are available to you, but from a schematic standpoint, Pittsburgh is going to present a lot of problems to Joe Milton in this offense. That you're going to have to diagnose some things at the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to read and react. They do a good job of disguising what they do. So this is a big week for Joe Milton and this offense in terms of, all right, if that first receiver's not there, you've got to go through your progressions quickly and you've got to be able to go through them confidently as well. Like, you can't be standing in the pocket and second-guessing where you're going with the football, because if you do that, either you're going to get sacked or you're going to be late delivering the ball, and either one of those are a recipe for disaster against this Pittsburgh team.
Exactly. And, I think, if Callaway is out there, there's another element that Heupel said, Callaway out there, and if Cooper Mays is fine, that's really big for the offense. They've got the weapons to score points on Pittsburgh. And, I agree with Mike Wilson on two things. One, I thought, the tempo was good, but I agree that Tyon Evans I think he's just got a little bit more horsepower than Jabari Small, but it's a nice tandem.
They're both going to get a significant amount of carries this year, would be my guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's probably right that, like, Tyon, that Tyon will probably advance and end up with more. But again, that's one of those spots that you just didn't know. You didn't know when. And I thought Chandler looked pretty good for UNC. I mean, you lose Chandler and Gray, and you just didn't know. But they seem to be fine there. This offensive line will be not just Joe Milton's decision-making, but much better personnel, and also so much emphasis on pre-snap recognition and being able to adjust to different pressures. Again, Pittsburgh has 97 sacks the last 2 years. That is the most in college football. They also did that with guys like Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver, who are no longer with Pittsburgh. But that's one area where Pat Narduzzi, like, you can pretty much count on him having, guys who can rush the passer, guys who can be disruptive up front.
Well, they had 5 sacks against UMass.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much you learned against UMass, but 5 sacks.
Yeah, right. But, I mean, like, Kalijah Cansey, interior guy, very active, very athletic. I mean, he's a reason why, like, Cooper Mays is important to have on the field rather than having, like, Carvins move over to guard. And, I mean, it's a pretty big difference. I think the offense against Bowling Green, at least early on after that move, you saw the difference. I think that was part of the offense stalling. Then, they came out, started the second half, and said, okay, let's just go ahead and hand off and make it 21-6 and reestablish things. And they were fine, but against a team like this, a guy like Cooper Mays is very important to have on the field.
He is, and when you do get your chances down the field, which, look, I think Tennessee will get some chances down the field in this game. I think their receivers are good enough to create separation and at least have an opportunity to throw the ball down the field. Can your offensive line hold up long enough, consistently enough? We're going to find out on Saturday morning. But when you get those chances, you got to hit them if you're Joe Milton. I mean, you can't have 3 downfield shots again and overshoot them by 20 yards. Now, it's unrealistic to expect to hit on that play all the time. Like, Aaron Rodgers misses receivers down the field. You're going to miss guys every now and then, but at least at some point, you've got to find a way to connect on half of them if you're Joe Milton. And then Tennessee, you at least got to respect that if you're the opponent's defense. Like, to Mike's point in the last segment, it wasn't all bad for Joe Milton against Bowling Green. He's got a huge arm. There's a certain degree of respect that comes with that as a defense. Like, when the quarterback has no problem throwing the ball 75 yards down the field, you've got to be aware of that if you're a defense. But at some point, you've also got to hit on those plays if you're the offense. Otherwise, it becomes way less of a concern for that defense, and they move up in the box and all these different things. So it's great to have the big arm, but you've got to find some touch to go along with it. And if Joe Milton can do that, then that's when I think you're going to see this offense start to look more like Josh Heupel wants it to look like.
Well, I agree. Well, also, again, many years of watching Pat Narduzzi defenses, the mobile quarterback is probably the most consistent thing that would give those defenses trouble. And I know that doesn't make them, all unique necessarily, but I just think that a good way to slow down a pass rush is to have design quarterback stuff, and even just have some effective scrambles out of the pocket to where maybe they're a little bit feel the need a little bit more to have a spy versus having that be another guy coming on the blitz. So slow that down a little bit. I think Joe Milton as a runner has to be a big factor in this game. So the design run stuff for sure, but also he needs to he needs to decide whatever he's going to do quicker.
Yeah, you got to process the information quicker as well. And there's a big game coming up for Josh Heupel and company, 11 o'clock a.m., the start on Saturday on ESPN. So a big game for Tennessee against Pittsburgh. When we come back, we'll switch gears, get back into the Titans, including at least one prediction that's out there that should have Titans fans about as excited as it gets. And it could have the Titans, if all things break well in this prediction, as maybe one of the greatest teams in NFL history. We'll get to all that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Tune in to Nashville Sounds Baseball tonight on ESPN 94.9 as the Sounds begin a 6-game homestand at First Horizon Park against Memphis, the AAA affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. Pre-game show with Jeff Hemp starts at 6:50, and the first pitch is at 7:05. Nashville Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company and Farm Bureau Health Plans. We'll have some Sounds tickets to give away in the next segment as well.
I'm sorry.
Joe Rexrode, what's going on over there?
I'm sorry, man. Wow, if that would have been a switch, there would have been no sound. Also, I have I made a coffee for myself, and I put the cup, but not under the thing. So then all the coffee went, but I didn't see the coffee. I left. I came back. I didn't see the coffee, and so I was like, oh, so it didn't come out. And then it said bin is full. Okay. Oh, so sometimes it doesn't. The coffee doesn't come out of the coffee maker if the bin's full of waste. So I picked up the bin to pour it, to dump it into the wastebasket,
Sure.
and the hot coffee that was had gone into the area underneath went all over the floor. So now that's a mess. But I think I cleaned it up okay. Let me know after the show.
Okay, I'll go in there and check it out.
So it actually has been
Struggle bus.
It's been less of a disaster day than I thought it would be.
I agree. I think you've done a good job.
Thanks.
Admirable job today by Joe Rexrode here on the program.
Just I'm motivated by the Titans media, fantasy football people who are conspiring against me.
And speaking of motivation, we're about to provide some motivation for some Titans fans as well, because there's at least one prediction out there that is very good news for the Tennessee Titans. Titans Wire, which is a part of the USA Today network, Mike Moratis, the author of this piece, has come out with some bold predictions for the Titans in 2021. And I'm here to tell you, if all these things happen, the Tennessee Titans are going to be in the conversation as one of the greatest teams we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. Let's begin, shall we, Joe Rexrode, with number 1 on the list for Titans Wire. Derrick Henry will rush for 2,000 yards and will win the NFL MVP.
Okay.
So 2,000 yards
That's
for Derrick
big.
Henry, which would tie an NFL record for his third straight rushing title if he's able to accomplish that. And won't be denied the MVP he so rightly deserved last season, was the quote in this, which I love Derrick Henry, but
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers threw for 50 touchdowns and
You
5 interceptions.
You do love Aaron Rodgers
and
more,
was the
though.
number 1 team in the NFC.
But you do love Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know about the
You're
rightly
biased.
deserved stuff.
See,
but
that's
yeah.
the thing, is you're biased, but you're also accurate. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that. Number 2 on the list, the Titans will have 3 1,000-yard receivers. So A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, I could see both those guys having 1,000 yards, but this piece on Titans Wire says not only will those two have 1,000 yards, a third member of the Titans will have 1,000 yards receiving, whether that's Josh Reynolds or Anthony Ferguson as maybe the top 2 targets there.
Yeah, sure. Hey, someone will get 1,000. It's no big deal. Another 1,000 for someone. Who knows who it may be. Yeah. Okay, now we're starting.
So far we have Derrick
to veer
Henry
sideways off the cliff.
We have Derrick Henry rushing for 2,000 yards and winning an NFL MVP. We have 3 1,000-yard receiving for the Titans. The third on the list, Ryan Tannehill will break the Titans' single-season passing yards record, which I don't think is that big of a jump. The Titans era for sure, which I believe he already holds.
He set it last year right.
For 38-19. Now, the Warren Moon franchise record of 46-90, that's a pretty high number.
And remember, what's funny about that prediction, nowadays people get that number on a fairly routine basis.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen 5,000-yard quarterbacks. 46-90 in 1991 was
absurd.
Yeah, like rushing for 2,700 yards.
Yeah, it was a lot. The fourth prediction on the list, Elijah Molden will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. So Elijah Molden, we've heard some good things about Elijah Molden. We had him on the show last week. Obviously, really excited about Elijah Molden, but taking the leap of faith here that Elijah Molden wins Defensive Rookie of the Year.
I'm not 100% sure he's starting Sunday.
Exactly.
I think he's going to start, but Chris Jackson is back. I think Elijah Molden's going to have a nice rookie season. But, what does it take for a slot corner
You'd have to have a bunch of picks, man.
And even like there is some of these awards are also somewhat based on name recognition and draft status and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you're great, then that'll ultimately prevail. But like, what would you have to do there? Yeah, you'd have to get some. You'd have to like take one or two back on Mahomes, like maybe win the game in the fourth quarter with a pick six.
Yeah.
So, good luck.
At number 5,
That's an interesting one
on the list. The Tennessee Titans will finish in the top 5 in sacks this season. So going from 19 sacks a year ago total to top 5 in the league in sacks this year with Bud Dupree coming in.
So triple those sacks right away.
Yes.
I mean, look, it is a low number, granted. Like, they could double the sacks and still be in terms of pass rush.
Right.
So, but yeah, that seems lofty. That seems a little bit much.
Finally, when you factor in the previous 5 things that I've mentioned on this list by Titans Wire from USA Today, it all culminates with this. The Tennessee Titans will win the Super Bowl. All these things come to fruition, and the Tennessee Titans win the Super Bowl this year.
Well, I sure as hell hope so. I mean, they're not going to lose that game, are they?
Well, let me just tell you this. If Derrick Henry's rushing for 2,000 yards, breaking he's winning the MVP. The Titans have 3 1,000-yard receivers. Tannehill breaks the single-season passing yards record for the franchise. Elijah Molden wins Defensive Rookie of the Year, and they're top 5 in sacks. I feel pretty good about the Titans' chances.
No one will be within 25 points of them. So my question on this would be, is this? I think these are my bold predictions. Are all things that are going to happen in tandem, or like I'm just throwing out a few. I had to come up with a few bold predictions, so here they are, but I don't actually think that they would all happen together. I don't know what the answer is. But
I'm reading this as if these are all happening.
Because I did the Vandy, Tennessee game preview stuff, which now I wish I could erase from the internet entirely. And so I got all these people ripped on me for Vanderbilt best case 10-2. So my point was just I'm like best case going into this season. I picked Vanderbilt to go 4-8, which also seems ridiculous now, right? Like wow, that's way too optimistic. But my actual best case would probably be about maybe 7-5 going into the year. But the best case in this was game by game. I just said, is there any possibility? Is it physically possible for Vanderbilt to beat this team on a given Saturday?
Sure.
And I came up with 2 that there was no way, which was Florida and Georgia. Do I actually think they're going to be? No. I picked them to go 4-8. So you know what I mean? So it reads as, I'm saying Vanderbilt could be 10-2. I'm just saying there's only 2 absolute no chances. Now, right now, if you let me have another chance at it, it would be still different based on losing to freaking East Tennessee State, which, by the way, was one of the games I said had no chance. But I'm just saying.
That is true.
Maybe this guy doesn't really mean that he thinks they'll all be together. But you're right. When you read it, it doesn't say, like, these are independent of each other.
It does not.
This would be the greatest football team ever, perhaps.
Yes, it would.
And maybe the Titans will be.
Look, I'm not saying I don't think the Titans can't be good, because I think they will be good. I think the Titans are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I do. And we'll get to our predictions coming up a little bit later this week. But for all those things to happen, that's a lot, man. 2,000 yards on the ground for Henry, 3 1,000-yard receivers, top 5 in sacks, and Elijah Molden as the Defensive Rookie of the Year.
I think
that's a lot, buddy.
The thing is, if he just took out Molden and the 3,000-yard receivers, it would still be lofty, but okay. But the Molden and the 3,000-yard receivers is now these aren't bold predictions; these are reaches.
Well, the top 5 in sacks is a reach.
Well, I
guess Bud Dupree could come in here and just go nuts, and maybe that changes everything.
Simmons, Autry, Landry, blitzing, like Bowen's the D coordinator fully, and now he's all of a sudden it looks like Dean Pease blitzing again. I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll come close to happening, but that still, to me, is more in the real world than Elijah Molden is Rookie of the Year or just some random third 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah.
Like you're just handing out 1,000-yard receiving seasons like candy.
JP from Spring Hill texting in on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Is 10-plus sacks for Jeffrey Simmons this year too crazy of a prediction?
That's a high number. I haven't seen quite the elusiveness from him to make me think he's a double-digit sack player. Doesn't mean he can't be a great player.
Right now, he's got 5 sacks on his career.
Yeah, I think that's a little lofty. Now, I think like a 5-6 sack season with all the things he does as a physical player, as a run stopper, and as a guy who still can help their pass rush a lot by getting push, would be a great season for him. If he were to get 10-plus sacks, I think that's an element we haven't quite seen. Now, I think Danico Autry with Simmons, I would pick Autry to have more sacks than Simmons this year.
You got a texture that says the Titans may be top 5 in sacks in the AFC South.
Nice. See, Adam in Portland, that's how you text to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Sorry, I had to get more shots in it, Adam.
When we come back, we'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line on the Titans, looking ahead to Week 1 against the Cardinals. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025 on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Also, some tickets to give away coming up next as well, maybe with an opportunity to see Michelle Knezovic fire out a first pitch. We'll have that coming up next.
Yes.
This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by Volunteer State Bank, conveniently serving Middle Tennessee with 13 locations. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, is Jared listening? Jared, I hope you're listening. I want to talk college hoops real fast. Can I talk some college hoops?
You go right
Who's
ahead,
excited?
buddy.
Michelle, huh? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, Joe.
All right, Belmont has its schedule out. Some good games at LSU is a big one. Ohio, Evansville, Furman. They got a pretty awesome ESPN event. They have Drake. Then they could play Alabama or Iona, and then they could play Kansas or Dayton, Miami in the third round. So these are games that could really help. You know, last year, obviously, you didn't have the opportunity to be an at-large team. This team's good enough to be an at-large team, so they got a chance to make some hay. By the way, I don't see Vanderbilt on this schedule. Vanderbilt's got to schedule Belmont. You got to keep scheduling Belmont and local teams and all the I want to see Vanderbilt, Memphis. We got Tennessee, Memphis this year. I like Rick Barnes. You can't not keep scheduling Memphis. Jerry Stackhouse, you got to schedule Belmont. If you guys want your sport to be in better shape, give people games with good local programs that they want to watch.
That could be a potential Rex rant.
It could be. But right now, I mean, I just think about your sport and about trying to draw eyeballs in a very competitive sports environment. Schedule locally. This would be a great game for Vanderbilt to play Belmont this year. There's a top 25 team.
Belmont.
There's not an embarrassment in losing to Belmont. They're a top 25 team. You are not. So. And this is a Power 5 coach issue with mid-majors, and it's been frustrating for many, many years for me to see the sport not help itself more.
I like it.
There you go.
There you go. Fired up on this Tuesday morning. Speaking of fired up, we're fired up to give some tickets away to the Nashville Sounds taking on Memphis on Sunday. Not only will you be able to see the game, but you'll be able to see our very own Michelle Knezovic throw out the first pitch as well, which she's been working on. So looking forward to that coming up on Sunday. Be caller number 3 at 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller number 3 will win some tickets to see the Nashville Sounds in action against Memphis coming up on Sunday at First Horizon Park. So let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris in Nashville texting in. Y'all need to do a public appearance for the show. Fans of the show want to meet you guys. I would say stay tuned. Got some things in the works that could be happening on that front, so stay tuned.
Yeah,
people in public want to meet Joe Rexrode for sure.
Yeah, we're fine. But if we do have a public, here's Adam in Portland. Old Joe sounding like a drunk
he didn't
uncle.
Finish his thought. Just immediately went to Adam in Portland
at a family barbecue. See, that's how it's done. Well, we all still love the drunk uncle. Funniest guy. I don't know. This is nonsensical stuff, Adam. Come on. You can be better than this. I mean, I am kind of like the drunk uncle. I mean, you're
taking
wrong.
This text rivalry personally now.
I mean, it's intensifying a little bit.
It is. So Chris wants us to have a public appearance, which again we're working on. We'll have some things in the works. And Adam in Portland and Joe are now enemies on the text line.
No, we're not enemies. Just rivals.
Frenemies.
I think he's right. Frenemy. There you go. Yeah. Well, I think more public. Obviously, as the world hopefully changes, like more remotes, things like that could be done. So we're into it.
Christopher on Periscope says there needs to be a volunteer classic where teams from across the state come to Nashville and play.
No, I mean, look, I've written about this, Steve Cavendish. Like, there's been all kinds of different ideas about what they could do, and I totally agree. I mean, you've got way too many. This is a college basketball state in terms of the number of quality programs, men's and women's programs. You could have some really outstanding events or an event around that here in Nashville, and it's a matter of someone taking charge and getting it done. I mean, we could.
Let's take charge.
Let's do it.
We could just do it. Bring in your cats,
Catter Day.
Gosh, you're going to be first on the SEC tournaments here. Boy.
I've come every year.
To the cat. Oh, okay. So you've already enjoyed some Nashville. Yep. Yeah.
The worst year was
Lexington South.
Admiral Schofield and Tennessee beat us that year, and I just said
that was the worst year.
That was a great game. Yeah,
until I'm wearing Kentucky and all these orange people walk towards me, screaming at me.
That'll happen from time to time.
Orange people.
Okay. Yeah.
I like this. You guys should sit next to each other next time Tennessee and Kentucky play. I also like how we keep talking about college hoops, Jared.
Yeah, this is going against everything I stand for.
I know. You and Jared, you're totally on Team Jared on this.
Wait, Jared said that Jerry Stackhouse blocked him on Twitter yesterday. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. He goes, I don't know why, but he blocked me on Twitter.
He blocked, like yesterday he blocked him?
No, in general.
Oh, yeah. I think he's blocked quite a few people.
Yeah, he's an infamous Twitter blocker. I don't know if he's quite Deion Lewis level of Twitter blocking. Deion Lewis is in the Hall of Fame. Deion Lewis blocked me on Twitter. Never had a conversation with Deion Lewis in my entire life. I have no idea how he could have possibly blocked me on Twitter.
So, yeah, like did Deion Lewis like get a master list of, okay, who's everyone who would be like Nashville media?
I don't know.
He just look around or see who certain
I
people.
probably tweeted about Deion Lewis at some point because he was largely awful as a member of the Titans. So maybe he just name searched and found it that way. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely blocked by Deion Lewis on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand why you are. Because, I mean,
I don't even remember like tweeting anything necessarily. But, yeah, it went south. It was amazing because the thing is, he was actually pretty decent for a lot of 2018. And then Derrick Henry goes off. And so it wasn't really necessarily that Deion Lewis was bad. He was in 2019, but he just immediately did not want to speak to another human as soon as Derrick Henry became Derrick Henry.
There's still that picture that will be the gift that always keeps on giving, though, of the picture taken out there. It may have even been by George Walker, of Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis standing next to each other in a drill. And it just looks like it's like bring your kid to work day for Derrick Henry.
Like how could those two people possibly both play the same position?
Same position in the best league in the world.
Yeah. It's kind of like Jeremy Pruitt and Clark Lee are both, college football head coaches. Could not possibly be more different.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. That's for sure. Titans favored by 3 against Arizona in this game. I looked at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Titans -3. They say sometimes you get 3 points for being at home, so that tells me it's a pick'em in this game between the Cardinals and the Titans.
If this were the Super Bowl, and maybe it will be, maybe it's a preview, it would be a pick'em.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I'd favor the Titans a little bit on a neutral field, even.
I would say a little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
Now, I got to wait and see what the defense is. I think that's what the holdup is
for
Vegas.
Sure.
But we're going to find out or begin to find out the answer to that question coming up against Arizona.
We're getting there.
And whether or not anybody can cover DeAndre Hopkins. We'll have more to say about that this week as the week goes on as well. That's going to do it for us today here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by Volunteer State Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Darren Donica Chase is coming up next. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game.